My name is Cadence. I work the closing shift at a decaying little dive bar tucked away on the edge of a dying town. The place rests off the highway, but the back parking lot leads into a shadowy alley that only locals seem to know about. It's not much dim lights that flicker when they shouldn't, and a jukebox that groans out warped classic rock like a haunted music box. Most nights, it's just the usual drifters, the forgotten locals, and the occasional soul who wandered too far off the road. I liked it, oddly. The repetition lulled me into a strange comfort. The pay wasn't great, but I'd learned how to navigate the regulars, the mutterers, the lurkers, the ones who sat in silence like shadows glued to a bar stool. Weekends were chaos, but during the week, it was just me, alone, always, no barback, no cook, just me and the echo of my footsteps behind the counter. That's why I noticed him immediately. It was just after 1 a.m. when he stepped inside, tall, composed, too clean for a place like this. He looked polished, almost sterile. He wore a black turtleneck beneath a long, dark coat perfectly tailored. He wasn't flashy. He was deliberate, the kind of man who didn't just walk in, he arrived. He scanned the room like he was measuring something. Then he moved straight to the bar, posture inhumanly stiff. His eyes were wrong too still. Too calm, he ordered something expensive without blinking. As I poured his drink, he asked me, smiling too wide, "Do you enjoy working here?" I said yes, but my voice didn't sound right. I cracked a joke about bartending, and he chuckled perfectly on cue, like he had rehearsed it. There was no creepiness at first. That's what bothered me. He felt like a man trying not to be creepy, like a mask that fit a little too well. We chatted. I welcomed the distraction. Then he asked, "Ever consider doing something bigger?" His tone didn't match the question, too smooth, too cold. I told him I was content. He seemed disappointed, but not surprised. Then came the question, "What time do you get off?" That's when something inside me twisted. I gave a vague answer and turned away. He didn't press. He just laid a crisp $100 on the bar, slid it forward like a ritual, then walked out into the night. I didn't think much of it, just a weird man on a weird night, but I was wrong. A week later, he returned. This time, he wasn't alone. A woman trailed beside him, unnaturally graceful, like her limbs moved half a second behind her intentions. She was dressed young, but the kind of young that's trying to hide decay. Her smile reached her ears, but not her eyes. She brushed my arm as she called me pretty. Her fingertips lingered like ice. I smiled, but inside, every instinct screamed. The man didn't speak. He just watched. She asked a lot too much, where I lived, how old I was, whether I liked being alone so late. Then she leaned in and whispered, "We run a very exclusive party scene. You'd be perfect." She promised 10 grand for a weekend. Her smile was made of porcelain and pressure. I told her it sounded fake. She laughed like it was her favorite line. "Girls like you always say that at first." Then she said, "Come outside. Someone's waiting to explain." Nope. I shut it down. My tone changed. She knew, just then. A group burst in laughing, drunk, loud. She flinched. That mask cracked just slightly. Without another word, they left. I told my boss and co-workers. We agreed to be vigilant. He promised to stay within 15 minutes and said the cameras would catch anything. But a few nights later, I saw a car idling across the street, engine dead, lights off, just watching. I kept my keys in hand, walked fast. I got in my car and drove. It followed, every turn, every stop. I swerved randomly, still behind me. I was shaking when I pulled into the police station lot. The car sped off into the dark like it had melted away. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Another slow night. I was about to close. The door creaked open. Her. I texted my boss immediately, trying not to move. Her smile had not changed. She sat at the bar with that same calculated stillness. "I came to check on you," she said. Her voice was oil and water. I told her we were closing. She pouted, asked for one last drink. I nodded, stalling, and then I heard the door shut. I spun around. She was gone. I walked slowly to the entrance. Through the glass, a black van waited. Engine rumbling, no headlights. I locked the door. A second later, the back door rattled. Someone was trying to get in. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could, a metal shaker. I dialed 911 with the other hand. My brain said run. My body wouldn't move. Then headlights, my boss. He pulled in fast. The rattling stopped. The van peeled out of the lot like a shadow fleeing light. Police came. We reviewed the footage. It was worse than I thought. 2 masked figures crouched at the door, waiting. Another banging on the back, trying to drive me out. Predators, coordinated, planned. And the license plate, unregistered. It's been a while. Nothing came of it, but I never work alone anymore. Still, I can't shake one question. How did they know I'd be alone that night? Even now, sometimes. I see headlights, and I wonder. I used to work the graveyard shift at a lonely gas station off a forgotten stretch of highway. I say used to because whatever I encountered that night made sure I never would again. The place was small, barely saw any customers after dark. Most nights, I spent hours refilling shelves, wiping smudged counters, and occasionally ringing up a bleary-eyed trucker or lost soul. I remember it too clearly. The hours dragged in silence. Even the trucks had stopped rolling through, leaving me alone with the buzzing of fluorescence and my phone's cold glow. At one point, I stepped outside for a breath of air. The cold bit at my fingers, and I rubbed them together as fog curled from my mouth and vanished. The lot was barren. No cars, just pumps and shadows. The neon sign flickered like it was on its last breath. A wet haze clung to the air, making even the trees seem like blurred silhouettes watching me. It was so quiet, like sound had been swallowed whole. As I turned to head back inside, I caught a flicker of movement near the pumps. I stopped. A man was standing there. How I missed him before, I don't know. He wore a dark red hoodie, the hood up, hands buried in his pockets. No car, no motion, just stillness. He wasn't moving toward the store, just angled slightly in my direction. Watching. At first, I thought maybe he was waiting for a ride. But the way he swayed in small circles felt wrong, like his limbs weren't calibrated quite right. I went inside, pretending not to notice, but I watched him from behind the glass, each breath shallow. Then, without warning, he started walking, slow, deliberate, and pushed through the door. He didn't speak at first, just stared at me, eyes dead but calculating. Then, too quickly, like he'd rehearsed it, he muttered that his car had broken down and he needed gas. Or a jump. Something to get to the next town. His words barely held together. Nothing he said felt real. I offered to call a tow truck. He refused instantly. Said he just needed a flashlight. Maybe someone to check under the hood. It felt like a trap. Everything about him. The way he studied my face, waited for each reaction. It wasn't normal. But people at that hour aren't always normal. Maybe he was just odd. Or high. I asked where his car was, and he pointed toward the highway. Then he gestured at the monitor behind me. I glanced, and yes, there was a car there, except I'd just been outside. There hadn't been a car. As I stared at the screen, I noticed something, a flicker of motion behind the car. Crouched low, someone was hiding behind the bumper. A cold dread clawed at my spine. I forced a smile, told him I'd help, but first I said I had to grab my phone from the back. Calm, slow. As soon as I was out of view, I slammed my hand onto the emergency panic button. The alarm exploded through the store. I braced for violence, but what he did next was worse. He relaxed, no more shifting, no fake concern. He just stood straighter like the game had changed, and then he smiled, slow, wide, knowing. Not fear, not surprise, amusement, like he was waiting for this, like he wanted it. I froze, and then he turned and ran. Fluid, fast. I bolted to the screens, watched both him and the hidden figure sprint, not toward the car, but into the woods behind the station. The car just sat there, no engine, no lights, no movement. By the time the police showed up, the scene was exactly as I'd left it. Car still parked, no one in sight, no footprints, no tracks, nothing but stillness and trees. Then one of the officers said something that made my blood freeze. The front passenger door, it was open. There'd been a third person. I gave my statement, handed over the surveillance footage. That should have been the end of it. A few days later, they told me the car had been reported stolen a week earlier, more than 100 miles away. No one had come forward, no missing persons, no crimes linked to the vehicle. Just an abandoned car left like bait in the middle of nowhere. And that was it. Months have passed. Still no answers. Just silence. I don't know what it is about gas stations that draws things like them. But I know one thing for sure. I'll never work another night shift again.